So far, so good. It's been fun. I guess we're doing about a month total throughout UK and Europe, and it's it's a fresh start. It's a new beginning.
Do you find it harder to play the smaller venues rather than the bigger venues? I suppose in the smaller venue, while you're on stage, you can see everybody's face, and
I like seeing everybody's face. I mean, they each have their pros and their cons. I mean, of course, it's amazing to play big arenas. Playing Wembley and stuff like that is it's a dream. That's awesome. But you do feel incredibly detached. And for me, I'm the type of performer, I need that interaction. The pros of playing the clubs is you get that intimacy and you get that connection. And I could literally smell the audience, for better or for worse.
Let's go right back to the beginning of sort of your drumming career when you're in high school. Do you think being in an unsigned band today is a lot harder for bands rather than, being in an unsigned band 25 years ago?
Oh, no, it's so much easier today. Back when Dream Theater began in the mid-'80s, your only vehicle to get your music out was a record deal. In the early days, I guess I'll take that back. There was a way to get it out there and get a buzz going. And that was what I was doing with the band. It was the whole tape trading scene, and that's how Metallica got started, and Exodus and Testament and all those bands. And I was very much into that scene as well, and all the local fanzines and magazines all around the world. I would send out the Dream Theater, or we were called Majesty back then, send out the demo tapes to Rock Hard magazine and Metal Forces magazine, and they would do reviews, and then tape traders would trade tapes. So there was that. But that could only really just generate a buzz and some reviews that were good for a press kit. But otherwise, if you really wanted to do anything with your band, you needed a record deal back in the 80s. Now, now you have YouTube, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have websites. Honestly, young bands can go out there and get their music all across the world on their own, and not to mention the fact that you can record albums on home studios and stuff. Also, back in the 80s when we were starting, you had to go into a huge, expensive recording studio, and it's not like that now. Now you can record a great sounding record and put it out yourself, and not be at the mercy of an outside party, both creatively and financially.
What do you think about the current state of the music industry at the moment, Mike?
Well, it's tough. On one hand, I like that artists are gaining control over their music again, and their bands and the careers. Like I was just saying, I think that's a great thing that bands can actually maintain that creative and financial control. On the other hand, there's the other side of the coin, which is that artists are getting all of their music ripped off as well, and record companies are folding and sales are down. So it's a double-edged sword, but it's the nature of the business, and you gotta roll with the changes.
Let's talk about some of your drum kits, because some of your kits over the years have become almost as famous as you.
Mm-hmm.
My favourite has got to be the Siamese Monster. Just to describe that to anyone, it's obviously you had the 4 octabands, the high pitch octabands, 8, 10, 12, and I'm going to go with the 12 timp, is it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you had the 16, and on the other side of the kit it was like 2 combined kits. It needed 2 drum stalls, and you had, I'm going to go 13, 12, 2 low pitch octabands and a gong bass.
That sounds right, man. I don't know. I've been through so many kits I can't remember, but I love changing up my kits and using different kits for different bands. Even within Dream Theater, I would, each tour come out with something new and a new setup just to inspire me with a different environment. But yeah, I guess I kind of became known for having these massive kits with Dream Theater, and it's like these double kits, like a bicycle built for 2, basically with 2 thrones, and those kits are fun. But I always say this jokingly, the 2 things you could tell about me from those massive kits is A, that I don't pay for it, and B, that I don't set it up.
You're also renowned for the stick tricks, chucking your sticks to the guys in the wings, playing games with them. Did you do that intentionally to sort of ever get noticed, or was it just all part of the fun of the tour?
To be totally honest with you, I never did it for attention. I did it only because, I love drums. When I was a kid, I used to read Modern Drummer magazine and stare at Neil Peart's drum kits and just sit there and look at it. Like normal kids would be looking at Playboy magazines and naked girls. I was looking at Modern Drummer and looking at Neil Peart's drum sets,
I imagine hundreds of hours have gone into sort of sitting behind a desk and, just producing till stupid o'clock in the morning. Was there anything that you were ever unhappy with, whether it be, what would your worst gig experience be, or what's happened musically that you think, I hope that doesn't ever happen again?
Well, strangely enough, one of Dream Theater's most successful and popular albums, Images and Words, which I am extremely proud of, it was an incredibly difficult record to make. So actually, as much as I look back at that album and the tour and the explosion that happened as a result of it, I mean, I look back at all that with great memories. The making of the record was very, very difficult because it was our first record with a major label, and they made us work with a producer who made a great sounding record, but was very, very hard and difficult to work with. He wasn't really a people's person, and so the making of that record was very painful and difficult from a personal, point of view. So yeah, even though I love everything in the catalog and I'm proud of it all, some of them were painful or harder to make than others, but always the end result is something that I've always been proud of.
Now, obviously, on Images and Words, going back to that album, you used a electronic snare pad, didn't you? And did you find that difficult to work with, along with an acoustic kit?
It was. We had to make a lot of compromises, and the snare drum sound on that album is another one where that's the way the producer worked, and that was the sound he used, and this is what you're going to do, and those are the unfortunate realities of being at the mercy of the industry when you're a young band, and like we were saying earlier, these days kids don't, young bands don't have to be at the mercy as much as we did when we were younger.
But you did manage to put 4/4 over 15/8 in Learning to Live, so that's pretty special.
Well, yeah, that is pretty amazing that we were able to get away with what we were doing, especially in 92 or 91. We did that album in 91, and that was the height of the whole Nirvana explosion. So, I don't know, on paper you would think that would have been a recipe for the biggest disaster, but maybe that's why that album did well, because we kind of stuck out like a sore thumb at the time.
What would your advice be for not only young aspiring drummers, but aspiring musicians, aspiring bands,
like I said earlier when we were talking about, the internet and ways of promoting your band, I would say my advice would be to maintain as much of your identity and control, both artistic and financially, as you can. It's your music. And after 40, 45 years, 50 years now of big business in rock and roll, finally, after all this time, the artists are getting their music back, and we're not at the mercy anymore of the big machine.